Good morning or afternoon. I'm not sure when you're watching this video, but one of the things I want to take the opportunity to do is to spend a little bit of time walking you through the process that we will use in order to determine staffing for the 2010-2011 school year. The process will really include actually two different tracks. One track will consist of the certificated personnel. The second track will consist of the classified personnel. For the certificated personnel, our timeline is going to be a little bit more proactive. The goal, as I've said all along, is to issue RIF notices and offer employment as early in the semester as we can. For classified, we're running probably about 2 weeks behind. And so as we go through the certificated process, classified staff, please understand that your process will be similar, and I will come back to you with a video in the near future in order to walk you through your process. But for certificated personnel, the goal ultimately is to create an organization that's better tomorrow and better next year than we have today or we had yesterday, but still recognizing that we have a budgetary responsibility to meet. And in doing that, we recognize that we have to reduce in total roughly 70 individuals from our staff. Roughly 45 of those are going to be certificated personnel. As a result, the process we have is important. It's intended to be fair, but it's also intended to give us the best opportunity to move the organization forward to match the expectations we have for ourselves. Having said that, what I'd ask you to please do is to take some time over the next couple of days with your building principal and with what I share with you this morning or this afternoon, and then help me make sure that we move forward in a proactive manner. On Wednesday, the ACT team met and had the opportunity to review the process and the matrix that we're using in order to make determinations for next year. They will have the opportunity to share with some of you, but I also want you to hear the process as well. And so on your desktop or in an email that I'll send to you, you'll see a copy of the matrix that we're using. That matrix is actually broken down into a number of different categories. I'll ask each of you to fill out a portion of the matrix, and your building principal will walk you through that. And then the building principal themselves will fill out the second portion of the matrix. Ultimately, what I'm asking the building principals to do is, based on the matrix that they've gathered and the data that they've collected, is to forward to me recommendations based on the matrix. What I'm committed to doing, though, is making sure that there's a number of levels of checks and balances so that we ultimately have confidence with the recommendations that we're making. And so once the building principals forward to me their recommendations, myself, the associate superintendent, and other district level administrators will go through the data that was collected, the information that was forwarded, and if there's questions or concerns about some of what was collected or some of what was forwarded, I'll sit with the building principal to get clarification as to why their recommendations for staffing or the recommendations for their site were what they were. Ultimately, it will be my determination as far as the recommendations for employment. Once we have worked to make sure that each site has submitted its recommendations and each site's recommendations have been verified by the district office, then myself, the associate superintendent, and other district administrators will go through a similar process in order to create what would be essentially a district recommendation for employment. Ultimately, we will be in a position that my recommendations for individuals to receive contracts, as well as for individuals that will receive RIFing notices, will be based on the data gathered, as well as making sure that there is a number of different opportunities for us to validate and verify the data. The timeline is pretty quick, and it's not intended to rush the process, but it's intended to make sure that we're communicating as soon as we can to individuals that may not be offered opportunities next year with us. I recognize that we all have bills to pay and families to support, and so I think the sooner that we can make those decisions, the better off we're going to be. The timeline is such that over the next 3 days until Monday the 22nd, I'll be asking for your input on the variables and the criteria in the matrix. On the 23rd, then, I will establish the final matrix and send it back to the building principals, and then they will work with you over the next couple of days in order to make sure that they complete the task and you complete the task and that the recommendations are submitted to me. My goal then is to have the discussions, if necessary, with the building principals concluded by the 5th of March, and then ultimately for the final district recommendations to be in place by the 10th of March with those individuals who are going to be recommended for receiving reduction in force notices prior to spring break. As always, this is not an easy situation for us, and I don't want to make light of it, but I also want to make sure that we understand that part of why we're going down the road that we're going down is because ultimately, if all we do is solve our financial ends but don't create an organization that's better, then we will not have done what we're charged to do. And so I believe that by creating a matrix that takes into consideration multiple variables, by making sure that there's input on the part of the employee, input on the part of the building administrator, and verification and validation, and in some cases correction by the district administration, we will get into a position that those individuals that are recommended for reemployment are those individuals that based on the situation that we're in, match the expectation of our district. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact myself or Dr. Lockwood. And please, over the next couple of days, if you have suggestions on variables for the matrix, please don't hesitate to send them to me. Thanks.